Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. How is everyone doing?
Doing great.
Good, thanks.
Wasn't sure if you were waiting for the
Excited.
audience to answer or looking for us.
I'm expecting way more interactivity from people on the other side of the screen, I guess. I should be addressing you all, but
That could be the new thing.
Exactly.
we're super excited. As I've mentioned to both of them before, we're doing something that's a little bit of a departure of what we normally do, which is to talk about branding in e-commerce, which can be a bit of a hot button topic. I'm sure everybody has some really strong hot takes. But we have brought in a special guest to join us on this episode, Tasha Romano with Form and Flow Studio. So Tasha, if you want to just take a second, maybe introduce yourself, let us know how you got to be the amazing person that you are.
Yeah, for sure. So, I am the owner of Form and Flow Studio. I studied graphic design back in 2017, but I have always really loved product-based businesses. So when it came time to doing branding and choosing a specialty and stuff like that, I was like, e-commerce is where it's at kind of thing, right? So I specialize in brand strategy, brand design, and then kind of translating that into your website for e-commerce businesses. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's so interesting, especially because I think in e-commerce space, especially, there's not a lot of conversation about the branding side of it or the power of branding. And it's starting to be a really big thing, especially in corporate. And they're really learning a lot about the power of branding and how important that strategy piece is. So I'm just really excited that I'm we can kind of bring that more and more into that e-commerce space, and getting to be a part of that conversation is really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a big piece of it, that when you look at an e-commerce business starting out, especially on the smaller side, there isn't a ton of focus on branding. There's more focus on roll revenue and bringing in more customers and making sure the products are getting out there. But I'm really excited to see how we can make these connections between how important and foundational branding is to just the entire customer experience, which I think is kind of just what you do so well. But maybe we can kind of kick it off with, what is branding? I would assume, most people would assume, it's the logo and it's the colors, right? That's it? Or what would you say branding is?
So it's a really fun one. Branding is so much more than that. And I think the best person who's ever defined it is Marty Neumer. And I'm probably saying his name wrong because I've only ever read it, but it's Marty Neumer. And he said that it's not the logo. I pulled a quote up, but he says it's not the logo. It's not the corporate identity system, which is those colors and fonts that we talked about, or the product. The brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company. And it's that gut feeling because we're all emotional, intuitive beings. Despite our best efforts to be rational. So that's his whole quote. And he wrote a whole book about this, and then he ended up writing a whole series of books and stuff. But I always thought that was so interesting because the visuals that we use, our logo or the colors or the fonts, influence how someone feels about it. And same with the actions a brand can take and how they use the product and that unboxing experience, they all influence how a person feels about it. But how that person feels about your brand is the brand, right? And there's only so much control we have over that. So you have to be, that's why it's so important to be consistent in those details, because you don't know which small detail is going to fall off that's going to suddenly undermine everything you've done, right? People can be fickle beings. So trying to keep on top of that is a big job. But yeah, I would say that's the best definition I've ever found. And also I think it's great because it talks a lot about that strategy piece, right? That strategy of a brand is more than just your colors and your fonts. That strategy is your values, your vision, your mission, how you interact with your customers, what that ideal persona looks like, and how you connect with them. That's all that foundation of the brand, right? And also how you use that in things like how you choose your customer service or what you choose to outsource or who you choose to partner with. That's your brand strategy at play, right? And your identity system, which is your logo and your colors and your fonts and all that stuff, should be a reflection of that and should be supporting it opposed to, undermining it. So yeah, my long-winded answer for you.
It's excellent though. I love that I'm kind of hearing you come back to the authenticity of it, that let's set up what the true brand identity is. And then the fact that everything kind of points back to that, just tells that you can't just have, it's not just the strategy. It's not just the colors or the font or the image you're trying to project. It's really has to be authentic and kind of run through the whole all the way down to the partnerships you're making and the way you're doing customer service. Yeah, it's really cool. definitely a good message for our listeners.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love how important it is, right? And like, there are so many books out there now, like Zappos with Delivering Happiness, where they talk about it. And like, I don't know if you guys have read Zappos Delivering Happiness, but it's so good. I totally recommend it, because it goes even beyond e-commerce businesses, but they decided customer service, they were delivering happiness, and that customer service piece was a huge part of that. And so they had some opportunities to cut costs and to outsource to, foreign countries, their customer support, but instead they ended up keeping it internal, and they ended up building their offices around the customer service department. So the customer service department is actually in the very center of the building, so that every department can come in and talk to them when they need to, but also every single employee has to do a turn in the customer service department, because it's such an important part, and they're constantly actioning feedback from their clients and stuff like that, because their core value is delivering happiness, and customer service is a huge piece of that. So they were able to really stay true to their values and become a huge company because of it, and hugely successful because they stuck to their values over cutting costs in the short term. And it's actually had a much better impact on them as a company, which I found super interesting. But yeah. Recommend.
I think especially, Lindsey, for where we work with craft brands all the time, or what we'd like to call craft brands that are typically, it's a little bit more of a premium product. Oftentimes it's, either made in a sustainable manner, or it's, really high quality version of whatever the product that you're getting is. And I think that's a really great message, that it's at that level. That's not the cost is obviously part of it. No one wants to pay $1 million for, a bar of chocolate. But on the other hand, it's, that's only part of the story, and probably not the most important part of the story. So, make sure that you're not just cutting costs, at the expense of some of those other important brand stories and brand attributes that you're bringing through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that book. And I think that's one company that's taking a page out of Zappos's playbook. And I feel like it's intentional. It may be that they took some people who used to be at Zappos. I'm not quite sure, but Chewy, I think, does a really excellent job kind of displaying this. Just like a quick aside, my mom's dog passed away like a couple months ago, and she had something on auto ship on Chewy, and she had let them know, hey, I don't need this auto ship anymore. My dog passed away. The next day they had flowers at her door to say, we're so sorry for your loss. That kind of like deep personal customer touch is so impactful. My mom was so blown away that the company she orders random dog food from on auto ship took the time to really care about something that really meant a lot to her. So I know Zappos did similar types of things. They're on many podcasts and just interviews talking about just the amazing, like deep personal touch that they have with customers. So I think you're spot on. And I love that that's potentially a connection with the brand, because now you think, my mom will always think, oh, wow, Chewy really cared. And if I'm going to buy again, I'm going to buy again from Chewy. So it's those kind of connections that can outlast an ad or, a spot on the radio or something like that, and is so worth the investment. So I kind of love linking branding with those kind of deep personal customer touches. I know we're kind of walking away a little bit about what we originally wanted to talk about, which was top mistakes in branding for e-commerce. So we kind of mapped out 3 top mistakes. What are people doing wrong? What could they be doing better with their e-commerce branding? Let's just kick it off with the first one. This is kind of what I was touching on earlier, and what I think most people think branding is. It's just the logo. So people letting the logo do all the work, right? What's wrong with that? Tasha,
exactly.
Do you have an opinion on it?
Oh gosh, I have so many opinions. No. So the logo is a really important part, because it is like that main identifier that you have, right, for your brand. And it could be an icon or words or a letter or anything really, right? That becomes your logo that you use over and over and over again. But the logo doesn't have to tell your whole story, right? Like, think of some really successful ones, like Nike Swish. I was like, it's not a shoe. They're a shoe company, or they're a sportswear company, but it's just a Swish, right? Or Apple is an apple, right? But it means technology to us now, right? I see so many, like, especially like brand new startup e-commerce businesses who try and they're like, yeah, I want, the logo to tell all these different parts of my story, or like, I'm natural and I'm this and I'm that and I'm the other thing. And then they want all of it in the logo. And then you end up with a super busy logo And a lot of the time people end up only making one logo, especially in the early days, because they don't know that they need more versions. So you have this one logo that's literally jam-packed with every single thing your brand is trying to represent. And then you're trying to like shrink it down to fit on the website and like go in all the places you need it. And no one, like, it just looks like a busy spot, right? There's nothing recognizable or, you know, exciting or impactful about it, right? Like it's not going to stick with people beyond the 2 seconds that they look at it, right? Or they only understand the elements of everything you packed in because you explain it to them. And I think that if you have to explain it, it's not effective because people need to be able to look at it. Like you're not going to always be stood there beside your logo being like, hey, look at my logo. These are all the elements that I want to show you about it. Like, I'm really excited about it. And like, it's good to be excited about it. But we also have to remember that your logo is a tool. It's not just something we fall in love with. It's a tool and it has a purpose and it has to fulfill that purpose, right? And one of those is to be recognizable, to be easily identified, and to be scalable, right? You need to have different versions of your logo so that you can have one you can put on a billboard the size of a building, but also one that you can put into, you know, that little tiny picture that shows up in the tab of your web browser, right? You need to have something that's going to hit all these markers and it's going to be flexible and adaptable, right? While still being recognizable. So it's got to hit all the points.
I love that. I love the idea too of, I think you're so right when picking the original icon for a brand. Unless you are Apple or Nike or another brand similar, that doesn't mean anything to anybody yet. There's going to be like a lot of time and effort that goes into educating the customer around your logo and getting that face time with people. So just expecting that logo to do all the work right on the outset is really unrealistic. And I think you mentioned having text make sure to accompany that icon as much as possible. So there's that association that's what it means. It's with your brand. It's with this company. I think that's really interesting and something probably easily overlooked if you're just like, oh, I got to pick a logo for my e-commerce brand and then I'm done.
Yeah. Exactly. No, it's so true. It's such a good point because it took Apple loads of years to be able to use just the Apple symbol. And it took Nike a huge amount of time to be able to use just the swoosh and have people recognize it and know that that's what it means and have an emotional reaction to it. Like whether or not we're fully aware of it, we look at these things and we do have an emotional reaction to it, right? Like for me, Apple is, you know, creative and exciting and easy to use and beautiful and elegant and like cutting edge in my industry, right? But that doesn't mean everything to everybody, right? Because like my brothers are huge tech people and they're like, I'll never buy Apple or like they never recommend it. And I was like, well, I'm an Apple diehard fan kind of thing, right? Like these things mean different things to different people. And that's why the brand is in the emotion. But exactly like you say, like it took so many years for them to be able to just use their icon and have it mean something. So you can use your icon in your starter stages in different areas for different things. But at the same time, as much as possible, you want it to be the full logo. And your full logo is going to be your icon as well as your words. And you don't want too much variation in that because you're building recognition and all the other elements of your brand have to support that, the feeling that you want to be bringing out too, right? Like your ad campaigns and your marketing need to be telling that same story and bringing out those same feelings so that when they interact with that ad and they get that feeling, they can recognize that logo and start associating the feeling with that like branding, right? With that logo, with that company, so that they can always come back to it. And so when they think of things like, you know, dog food for Chewy, your mom is now like going to be a diehard fan when she hears of something like, yeah, I don't know where to get my dog food. She's going to be recommending it, right? She has such a strong feeling associated with that brand and that icon that I'm sure now if she ever gets a package from them again, she's going to get that feeling again every single time she sees it, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's such a powerful thing, right? You do want to keep it together as much as possible, especially while you're building recognition.
That's great. All right. So now we've got a perfect logo. Everything is, you know, it's scalable. We've got the words to describe it. We can use it in multiple different places, have the variations we need. What's mistake number 2?
Jumping on trends or choosing things just because you really love it. So like you see it a lot, right? It's really easy to get caught up in like a trend where everyone's using like a cursive font or watercolor pastels, you know, illustrations and stuff like that. And like, they are beautiful and they are on trend right now. So you feel quite cutting edge. But the thing about trends is they don't tend to have longevity. And so you really want something that's going to be able to age with your brand, right? You don't want to rebrand every 2 years to be with the next trend. You want something that's going to last you 5 to 10 years or more, and that you can just do little tweaks to as you go down the line, right? Like HP recently rebranded, I think in the last 5 years or so. And the logo is very similar to their old logo, but it's so elegant, right? Like I think a lot of people who don't pay attention to those things may not have even noticed the new logo, but I'm in love. I like look at it all the time. I've read up on the brand that like did it, and I'm like so involved with it. But it was something they could do that felt more aligned with their brand without having to make huge changes, but it's still effective. And so that they can still ride the recognition that they've had while also like rebranding. I feel like I'm swaying a little bit. I'm like, ooh, like a new path here. But I think it's really important to think about the longevity of your logo. And if you are just choosing something because like purple's my favorite color, like purple may not have the psychology behind it that you need it to evoke the right feelings in your customers. So choosing it just because you love the color purple isn't effective, and it's not going to allow your branding to do its job, right? Which is to evoke the right emotions in the people through the visuals, right? And so, yeah, I would say avoid trends, because also you end up looking like everybody else, and avoid stuff just because you really like it, even though you really like it. And that's great. Like it has to do a job, right? Like sometimes you don't pick the thing that you like, you pick the thing that's going to do the job the best, right?
Can you speak to, I guess it probably is logo and really everything across the branding spectrum, but especially for startups where you're still kind of defining your story and still figuring out what direction you're going. How do you kind of treat that where you do need to start putting together something that's going to be recognizable and timeless and stick with you? On the other hand, next year, your products may have a really different focus than they have this year, as you kind of figure out what your customers need and pivot as needed.
Absolutely. I would probably, it's a really tough one, because on one hand, you want to get up and running as fast as possible, right? Especially in the early stages, because you want to get that real life market feedback. But on the other hand, you want to do it intentionally and you want to do it purposefully, right? Because if you kind of prime your market first, you're able to kind of deliver something that they need and have a following to like launch new products and ranges with. So if it's possible, I would say do a brand strategy phase. So with all of my customers, before we ever touch a logo or touch a visual item, we always do a strategy phase where we talk a lot about, what was the problem you saw in the market before you got started? And why did you choose to start this business? What are you excited about what you're bringing to the world? How are you going to help people, kind of thing? And really start there and then say, okay, what have been some really important things as we talk about their business that are the reason why you maybe chose that packaging over another packaging, and just kind of trying to put labels and names to the decisions they're already making and to what's kind of driving their sway, so that we can really hone in and end up with a defined strategy, so that by the end of it, we can be like, okay, this is our strategy. This is what we're going with. And then, you always have to market test it, right? You have to put it out there into the world, see what happens, see what the feedback is from the market. And then maybe there'll be tweaks and adjustments that you have to make along the way. But the idea being that if you take that time to be strategic with it first, you'll have tweaks to make, not huge course corrections, right?
Definitely.
It'll be minor pivots opposed to being a brand new start, right? In saying that, you're never too late to rebrand. So if you just throw something together so that you can get your product in the world and so that you can make sure that there's a demand for it and a need, and just test your idea, right? Because you have a hypothesis until you put it into the world. So if say you just slap a bunch of things together, you put your product in the world, people are giving you good feedback on the product, but maybe sales are flat, or you realize that what you have isn't actually aligned with what the market is needing, then you do it then, right? You do your strategy phase, and then you create branding that represents that. And then you translate that into the website and the tone of voice. And then you kind of go through the stages, right? It's never too late to rebrand, but it's never too early to kind of set up intentionally as well, right? So I think it just depends on each person's individual situation.
Awesome.
I hope that answers that. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. And I think that's definitely something we wanted to talk about a little bit today too. So it's a great to kind of jump into that, because that was a big question I have, is the rebrand and kind of when the right time is. I would say, anecdotally speaking, we see a lot of people come in and say, hey, this is my product. This is my company. I'm going to go ahead and, I've got it set up on a Shopify website. Want to kind of flip the switch, run some Google ads and profit. And it's kind of well, you got to tell me a little bit more about the story. And usually it's there. It's just people don't necessarily think through it. I think that's maybe to your point, the strategy phase can be so powerful, not only in, answering those questions, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of like, they're not telling you, they're telling themselves oftentimes as they kind of figure out the authentic story behind their product that's in there. You just got to kind of pull it out. But yeah, we see that a lot where it's either a brand that has been working for a little while and maybe doesn't have those answers as much. They just kind of have, a pretty generic website and want to just kind of flip the switch and start driving some traffic. And then, hopefully everything works out. And the answer we always kind of give is, well, we got to make sure that we're kind of fitting in the right place in the marketplace, that we're, describe the product, describe your story well enough, understanding the positive product attributes and kind of how that all ties together into one unified story. So yeah, I guess that's a good question there for you, is kind of like, when is that right point? If you're starting out, maybe you've done a strategy phase, maybe you haven't. When's the right time to do that kind of full rebrand package? Or, is that, hey, let's get out into the market and kind of test some things out and get to know our customers and figure things out before we go the route of, spending money on a logo and color scheme and everything as well?
Yeah, I love that you've brought this up, because I think what I do pairs so well with what you guys do in that same sense, right? Where like that strategy piece is so important for influencing the design, but also the marketing, and the marketing really supports that. And I think that it's such a cohesive process. So like, I've loved that you like touched on that. I think it is so important, right? Like there's only so much branding can do if you aren't getting any traffic, kind of thing, right? And it's the same, right? You can get all the traffic you want, but if your brand isn't connecting with people, it's not going to be as effective as it could be, kind of thing, right? And so I guess like to actually answer your question about like, when is the right time? It's hard. I would say it's a case by case basis, because like I've talked to, like, I've had clients who have a product that they know works really well, where they have people who are excited about it, but maybe they started in like trunk sales or at craft markets, and now they're starting to transition online, or they're starting to build it up. And I would say that's a great time to do it, because you already have some face time with your customers and you have that proof of concept. But then again, I've seen other brands that I follow and I love who spent a lot of time on their branding and their pre-launch campaigns before they actually even launched their product, and were hugely successful because they did it that way. So I think you can do it either way. I think it depends a lot on your personal goals in your business, like how much finances you have, what your timeline is, what kind of product you're launching, all that stuff. Because I think there's a lot of benefit to priming your market before launching your product. But there's also a lot of benefit to knowing more about your audience and more about how your product serves their needs, to then use that data to then make the decision, right? So I think you can go either way super easily. I think it's up to you and like what your goals are and where you're at as to which one you do, and like what makes the most sense for your business. Because each business is individual, because each business owner is individual, right? And I think that that's really important. Like there's no one size fits all. I would say that the time to rebrand is, like I've told people, like if your marketing isn't getting you great results, it's probably because like lots of people are like, oh, I have loads of traffic, but no conversion. I'm like, it's probably going to be your website and your brand. Then like, let's see what we can do with that, kind of thing. Right. Because like, that's one really good flag that says people are interested in something that you're doing, or people are curious, but then they're getting there and they're not finding what they need, or they're not getting excited about it. And so I think that's a really good sign that you should be kind of adjusting or tweaking or fixing it at that point, kind of thing. Right. But also like, you kind of want to get there before that, because you've already spent money on marketing. Right. And so I think if you like look at your business and you feel like if you already have been up and running for a while, you're not seeing results, that's a sign that you should probably like assess your foundation, assess that brand strategy, assess that, branding and that website, and then kind of try again. If you're brand new, I would say think about, basically like how fast do you want to get to market? And do you want to just try your idea and see how it works and then come back and do it? Or do you want to get set up right that first time and really launch to a primed market? And depending on which of those best fits your needs at that time, I would say that's time for your brand. I feel like I rambled and I was like, I hope that actually gave some information.
It is definitely a very personal business decision. So I like that you kind of left that in there. It's not one size fits all. Well, cool. I think I derailed our top mistake a little bit with that diversion. So let's jump back in. What is top branding mistake number 3?
I think it ties in well, but it's trying to be everything to everyone. So I would say a lot of people come and they're like, you ask them like, oh yeah, who's your target market? I don't know if you guys get this a lot. I know I get it all the time where people are like, everyone can use my product, or like everyone can use my skincare. It's super safe. Even babies can use it, and old people, and it'll help everybody. And I'm like, I love the enthusiasm. I'm so glad you're excited about it. I'm glad you have such a good product. But there's a difference between having a target market and who you can serve with it. And so I think it's really important for people to understand, because I mean, like vanilla ice cream is great, but I'm like, there's a very small group of people who are going to choose vanilla ice cream over everything else. Right. And so if you're trying to be vanilla so that you can be interesting to everybody, you're still actually only really appealing to a small group of people who are diehard vanilla fans. Right. And so it's not about excluding people, but it's about best serving your small like subset of customers. And that means like using their language, hanging out in the spaces they do, being interested in the shows and the culture that they're interested in, right?
Yeah, I think layering back into that marketing side too, it's interesting. We come in oftentimes with smaller brands and they say, hey, we want to target everybody. We want to get out there. And I think what's really powerful about what you're saying is that, especially online where we can target, the entire US, you've got a pretty broad audience of people that you can reach. You don't necessarily need to hit every niche, every different type of person who could possibly use your product. If you pick the one group, even if it's a small group, that's going to be the most profitable or the most likely to use your product, chances are that, that's going to be the people that you're going to have the most success with. And what's great is if you're shipping nationwide, even shipping internationally, you probably have a wide enough breadth that you can find enough people who fit that segment that you can make enough sales. And then, eventually you'll exhaust that market. And that's when you can start thinking about targeting another market or a different use of your product. But in the beginning, when you're just getting started, why not tackle just those people that are most likely to buy your product? That's going to be where you're most successful. And then to your point, let's make sure that all of our branding and all of our storyline hits them specifically. And other people may come in and purchase and do different things. That's fine. You're not excluding anybody necessarily. But let's just really set ourselves up to win with that group of people that you're going to be most likely to win with in the first place.
Exactly. Absolutely. I completely agree, because I think there's this misconception in the space that by serving everybody, you're able to make more money, right? And they're like, especially in those early stages, it's about trying to like see that return on investment and like see the profits to confirm that you're on the right track or you're doing the right thing with your time. And, like it is important, but also it's this misconception that if I serve everybody, then everybody will give me money and I will have even more money and I will be even more successful at it. It's always like, no. Like not all those people are going to be excited about your brand in the first place. Even if it can help them, they're not going to be excited about it, right? Or maybe they have no interest in solving that problem that you're solving. So by really honing in on that target market and getting everything to support that story, 100% I agree. Like you're going to be so much more successful and your marketing is going to have such a bigger impact because everything supports it, right? Like everybody's telling the same story and on the same page, right?
It's awesome.
I really tying it. Oh, sorry. I really like tying it into the branding too, because you think about branding as such a personal thing and such a reflection of the owner and their values. But I feel like the conversation we're having it's really a reflection of your target market and the people you're serving and your customers. And that's really what serves you best when you're looking at them and incorporating all of those elements into your branding. So I think that's maybe a catch-22 or something people aren't thinking about. They're thinking, oh, my branding should reflect me and what I like. Whereas we're saying, maybe not. It should reflect the people you're serving and who you want to buy your product.
Exactly. It's like that crossover point where the people you're serving meet what you represent and what's really important to you as a business owner. And it's where it crosses over. That's where your branding should be. And that's where your business should live, right? Is in that crossover piece. Because yeah, great to be in business because you love it, but also like you're in business to make money and to have a profitable business and to help people, right? And the best way to help people is to make sure that you're actually helping them and listening to what they need, right?
I love that.
All right. So I think we made a good case for why we need branding, why we need some good brand strategy. Can you help me understand a little bit? We work with a lot of smaller businesses. Obviously everybody is price conscious, doesn't want to spend a ton of money, probably especially so if marketing isn't working or, the brand isn't working in the first place. There's probably just that much less money to spend on correcting that problem. So can you kind of walk us through, if we're trying to do this either from a bootstrap level up to, hey, we have a little bit more to invest in this and we're really ready to grow and scale. Is there kind of maybe a spectrum of what do you need at those different scales? What's the way to do this on the cheap if you just need a little bit of help? And then kind of, hey, now that we have more to put into this, here's what we really ultimately should do as we really look to scale and grow.
I would say a lot with like branding, especially, I think it's tricky because you can go on Fiverr and somebody can make you a logo, or like I've had people be like, yeah, my, neighbor's daughter's best friend really likes art. And so she did my logo for me. Like, I don't need a logo. And you're kind of like, okay, but like you do kind of get what you pay for, right? And so you could bootstrap everything and kind of get a rough prototype together and put it out in the world and see where you're at. But you're going to get a sense fast of whether or not it's working. And if it's not working, because everything has to be cohesive and tell that consistent story, and it has to be based in brand strategy. Brand strategy is expensive. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. It is expensive because it's a big phase and it's super important. And the impact that it can have long-term over your business is going to be a lot, right? Like based on everything we've talked about today, like it's kind of that underpinning of everything, right? Like it needs to be strong. Exactly. So I think you can definitely bootstrap enough to get a prototype into the world, but at a certain point, you need to invest in that strategy and that branding and that website to like all tell that same story. And also like, at least for like my clients, we always give a guidebook afterwards that summarizes everything so that you can share that with like a marketing firm and be like, hey, this is my brand. Like these are the pages where we talk about the brand story and the target market and the values and what those values mean to us and all that stuff. And like, these are our logos and how you use them and how to use the fonts. And these are the color codes and like all that stuff. Right. So having that foundation in place, I think is super important to getting it going. But even in saying that, like brand strategy and branding and website, like there's a myriad of prices. Like you can find somebody who does it for a couple thousand, or you can find someone who does it for like 20, 30, 40, 100,000 kind of thing, right? Like companies, like there's no limit to how much you could spend on it, right? And a lot of the time, how much you spend can be related to like the quality of it, but also like the size that they're used to working with, right? Like the Airbnb rebrand, I would not be surprised if that was, several $100,000, if not close to like $1 million kind of thing, right? Because it's a big company and the stakes are super high to get it right. And so part of that risk is taken on by like doing the branding right and doing the strategy correctly and stuff, right? On a smaller business, like do not spend hundreds of thousands of dollars like on your branding and strategy. Like it's not like you're not at that point where you need to invest in that because there's not a lot of risk at play kind of thing, right? And so I would say I think your like original question is like, what can you do at the different phases and like, what can you do in budget? I would say if you just want to get your prototype out into the world and see how it does, you can bootstrap it as much as you want. Take some time to kind of try and answer some of those key questions for yourself about who is it you're targeting? What are your values? What's your vision for the business? Why did you start it? Like, what was the problem that you witnessed in the market and with the products that you saw? And like, I think if you really take some time to answer some questions for yourself, you're going to be in a better place to kind of present that to a Fiverr branding person, right? Like a cheap, somebody who can just make you a logo as quick as possible. You will still need to go through the process with a professional down the line because they're going to push you in different directions. And the fact that you thought about it is going to put you in a better position to really dig even deeper and really kind of understand and comprehend and like really push that boat out kind of thing. Whereas if it's the first time you're thinking about it, you're going to be a little bit fresher. We'll get lots out kind of thing. But if you've had a lot of time to think about something like years or like answering those questions already, you're just in a better position to dig deeper, right?
Yeah.
There's never too late, never too early. There's always more to discover kind of thing, right?
Now, moving up to the other side of the scale, I think this is the perfect segue to give you some time to give us your plug. What's, how do people reach out to you and how do you like to do business together?
Awesome. No, I guess it's a good segue, right? I'm like, this is always a hard part for me. But basically, so I have my website. You can reach out to me, send me an email. I always set up a strategy call first, just to make sure that I can actually solve where you're at with your business. And then if all goes well, then, we do all 4 parts, right? So part 1 is the brand strategy. So spending all that time working on, answering those tough questions, really digging deep, really kind of coming up with some solid answers for you. And then we do the brand identity based on that information, right? So doing the logos, logo variations, colors, fonts, and anything else that's really unique about your brand. So like graphic elements, or, our font is always on the side and half cut off, or like we split it in half, like things like that. We'll define it all. We'll figure it all out. We'll make sure that it's really telling your story well. And then we go on to your website, which again, the website can be hard. So we really work with you to make sure that the content is telling your story, that you have a really good, consistent tone of voice. We do some creative direction for like the photos and stuff like that to make sure that they're, again, telling that story with everything else. And then really building that website out, making sure the tech is where it should be. And then the final step is that brand guide that I mentioned earlier, which is that kind of tool that you will continuously go back to, but also share with teams or outsource people as you grow and as you evolve kind of thing, right? That way everyone can be on the same page, read the same story, be inspired by it too, right? Like maybe someone will read it and be like, oh, it would be a really great way to implement this value would be through this story or through this campaign or something like that, right? It's just there's a lot of power when everyone's on that same page and you have something concrete that you can kind of refer back to and then get excited about and like interact with and stuff, right? So yeah, that's it. We do it all in 90 days.
Sorry. Can I just say as marketers who would be receiving that brand guide, how insanely helpful that is for us. I just want to put a plug out there for companies who are considering doing this. When you are transferring that kind of power of your marketing to as an outside group, you really want something cohesive that they can understand and refer back to. And I can tell you from personal experience, and Andy, I don't know if you would agree, when you have something like that, it is so helpful and it makes the process go so smoothly and so much faster than when you have to have lots of conversations around these exact same kind of pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd say if we get that, it makes our lives so much easier. And when we don't get that, we're trying to do some of this work on our own, trying to figure out some of these things at the outset. And obviously, we're not quite the same level that Tasha is going to be helping you kind of define the brand and get to that level. So definitely makes a lot of sense to work with a professional who has a lot of experience doing this and solving this exact problem and creating a product that you can ultimately bring to the agency or the marketer that you're going to do with kind of any other work that you're going to have done.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Exactly. They'll pair so well together, right?
Exactly. Well, I think we have just a few minutes left for our final segment of What's Good. So I've already prepped Tasha, so she should have something really awesome to share with us. I guess I can go first because I always seem to tell everybody else to go first. So I think my good news for this week is we actually have a family of groundhogs that live right next door to us. The daddy groundhog is named Chunk, and they recently had babies. And we planted a full flower garden that we were super excited about. I think I actually mentioned on a previous video as one of my other What's Good is that we had flowers coming up. Well, they're all gone now because Chunk and his family has eaten them all. So while that doesn't sound like good news, there's a piece of me that feels really happy that we could help feed them as it's very tough out there for a groundhog family. And so it's been really fun to get to see them come out of their hole in my neighbor's yard and come across the driveway and eat all of our flowers and then scurry back. So I'm just happy to feed Chunk and his family. That's my good news.
Based on the name Chunk, it sounds like he's doing all right.
Yeah. And we actually are not fully sure if Chunk is the mom who just happened to have her babies and now she's shrunk, or if Chunk is still the dad and mom is out there somewhere else. Where there's a big hot debate in our house right now if there's a full Chunk and Chunkette and the babies, or if it's just Chunk and that happens to be the mom and she just had babies. But they are quite large. You've ever seen like Puxatawny Phil when they hold him up on Groundhog's Day? He's like that size. They're really big.
That's awesome.
That's so funny.
We need some pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Well, so I'll go next. I think you stole my thunder a little bit. I have another garden-based what's good. We planted a garden this week, and it's the first garden we've ever planted. So we have some onions, pumpkins, and watermelons that hopefully will come up. I'll say fingers crossed, but I don't have a whole lot of optimism that this is going to work. We kind of threw them into the ground. It didn't, threw them into the ground, however, but it was a fun experience kind of getting into the dirt and feel like I'm a gardener now. So that's my what's good.
Nice.
Good. I love it. It's always exciting, like when you do some gardening and then in the fall, then you have something like from it to produce and you're like, wow, look, I made this out of nothing.
I'm really excited to see.
Win.
Also, we didn't have very much space, and apparently pumpkins and watermelons are both very large plants. So it'll be really interesting to see what ultimately comes from this.
Yeah, we'll see who wins in the pumpkin v watermelon fight. Yeah. Who comes out on top?
The tiniest watermelon of all time will like be produced, right? Just this little handful of watermelon. Amazing. I guess my good news for the week. I had a friend visit. So I used to live in Europe, and I've just recently moved back home to Ottawa, and it's been really nice to be home and like spend more time with family and stuff. But I've definitely been missing some of my friends over there, and it was so nice. One of them actually came to visit, and she came last weekend. Right now, she's gone off to explore like Montreal and Toronto and stuff, and then just coming back for last weekend and stuff. But it's been so nice to just like see people and be able to show her my new life, I guess, right? Like this is what my life looks like now, and she knew what it was like before, and so it's just really exciting to get to share that with her. Have a little explore. Awesome. It's totally off the gardening theme. If I knew we were sticking to a gardening theme, I definitely.
Yeah, where's your gardening? What's good?
Something else, yeah. My roommate is propagating a plant. No, but it did. It finally grew roots. I was like, that's garden related, right? It's not mine. But.
No, I think seeing friends is a really good one too. So that's just fine. Perfect. Well, thank you, Tasha. We really, really appreciate you taking the time and having this really great conversation. I think it's been really exciting to explore all these elements, and I think our viewers are definitely going to get a whole lot out of it. But we just really, really appreciate it.
No, I've had so much fun. It's been so nice to chat with you guys and just like discussing everything, right? Like this is my passion. I absolutely love this. I'm like an opportunity to talk about it with people who know things I don't know. I was like 100% I'm there. Bring me in. Do it again. Awesome. Anytime.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time.